Emily sat in her modest apartment in the suburbs of Seattle, where the air was filled with the faint scent of dried straw, mingled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee warming on the small kitchen stove. The morning sun filtered through light linen curtains, casting golden streaks across the old wooden table, cluttered with bundles of straw she had carefully selected at a farmer's market in Tacoma. Her fingers, slender and deft, gently wove a straw angel, a small talisman she crafted with warmth in her heart, each loop infused with her hopes and dreams. Straw weaving was more than a hobby for Emily. It was a way to soothe a soul burdened by doubts that had become her constant companions. At 30, with long chestnut hair tied in a loose bun and deep green eyes that sparkled like Lake Washington on a clear day, she had always dreamed of true love. But her relationships always ended in disappointment, leaving an emptiness in her heart, like an unfinished melody cut off mid-note. Her life felt stuck, and she sensed a need for change, but the fear of making the wrong choice bound her like an invisible thread tightening around her heart. Emily grew up in a small town near Seattle, where her mother, an amateur artist, taught her to love art and nature. She remembered running through fields as a child, gathering straw for her mother's projects, and how they would spend evenings together crafting small figures, laughing and sharing stories. Those memories warmed her, but they also reminded her that she hadn't yet found her place in the world. Her apartment in Seattle's suburbs was small but cozy. The wooden floor creaked underfoot, watercolor paintings from local fairs hung on the walls, and a pot of lavender on the windowsill filled the room with a gentle fragrance. Emily loved this space, but lately it felt confining, as if it mirrored her inner struggle. James, her boyfriend of 6 months, seemed like the perfect partner to many. Tall, with short, dark hair and a confident gaze, he was the director of a small law firm in downtown Seattle. His broad shoulders and tailored suit created the image of a successful man who knew what he wanted. James had a habit of planning everything in advance, and his proposals often sounded like business deals, which sometimes irritated Emily. His confidence drew her in, but it also made her wonder, was this love or just a desire for stability pushing her forward? James had grown up in a wealthy family that valued discipline and success, which was reflected in his direct, sometimes sharp manner of speaking. Emily admired his ambition, but she often felt that his world was one of cold offices and contracts, while hers was filled with the soft warmth of straw and creativity. One evening, as they sat in a cozy cafe in downtown Seattle, where the scent of freshly ground coffee mingled with soft jazz melodies, James took her hand. The cafe was bustling, but their table by the window felt like a small island of calm. His palm was warm but firm, reflecting his character. "Emily, I've been thinking a lot. Move in with me. Let's roll a die. If it's odd, we go today. If it's even, tomorrow," he said, pulling a small, worn die from his pocket. His voice was steady, but a flicker of impatience crossed his eyes, as if he expected immediate agreement. Emily, glancing nervously at the die, felt her heart tighten, as if facing a monumental decision. She watched as the die rolled across the table, landing on an even number. "Tomorrow, then?" James asked, smiling, but his smile felt more formal than genuine. "I need to think about it," Emily replied, softly, touching the straw angel hanging around her neck as a pendant. This talisman, crafted by her own hands, reminded her of her childhood, when she wove straw in the garden and listened to tales of ancient rituals that protected against misfortune. She recalled her mother saying that straw angels brought luck and helped guide one's path. Emily couldn't shake the doubts buzzing in her mind, like the distant waves of Lake Washington visible on Seattle's horizon. She liked James, but in his arms, she didn't feel the spark she had dreamed of since her youth. Her relationships were like her straw figures, beautiful but incomplete, lacking the final touch that gives them soul. She thought back to her past romances. Her first boyfriend, a Seattle musician, promised her the world but vanished after a few months, leaving only a few guitar chords. Another, a young entrepreneur, seemed perfect, but his ambitions overshadowed her feelings. Each left a small crack in her heart, and now she feared James would be another mistake. She felt she stood at a crossroads where every step could change her life. Emily decided to seek advice from Madame Clara, a renowned seer whose wisdom had always been her guiding light. Madame Clara, a slender woman in her middle years with kind brown eyes and gray strands neatly tucked into a low bun, lived in a cozy cottage in the suburbs of Tacoma. She wore a white linen blouse that swayed in the breeze, giving her the air of a wise healer. Her cottage was surrounded by a garden of wildflowers swaying in the wind, and the interior smelled of dried herbs and freshly baked bread. Shelves held clay pots adorned with intricate patterns and embroidered napkins Madame Clara had collected over the years. Emily sat at the oak table, clutching a cup of herbal tea, its fragrance calming her nerves. "Madame Clara, I can't decide," she confessed, her voice trembling, her green eyes searching for answers. "I'm not sure about my feelings for James. I feel like I'm making another mistake in love." Her words poured out like a stream, filled with anxiety and hope. Madame Clara, peering thoughtfully through her thin glasses, replied, "Pick a few wildflowers and place them in a bowl of water. See what fate tells you." Her voice was soft, but carried a strength that reassured Emily. Emily returned to Seattle, navigating the bustling streets where cars honked and people hurried about their business. Madame Clara's words buzzed in her mind like bees in a summer garden, urging her to listen to her heart. She feared that moving in with James would be a step into an abyss, destroying her dreams of true love. She recalled how Madame Clara had looked at her with warmth, as if seeing her very soul. "A marriage with James could be stable, but I don't see great love," the seer added, her voice soft but certain. "You're nearing 30, you crave stability, but don't rush, dear." Her words were like a gentle melody, soothing Emily's heart, like a warm breeze from the Pacific. She felt a wave of relief, as if a weight had been lifted, but doubts still pressed on her, like clouds hanging over Seattle. Back home, Emily decided to postpone the move. She called James, her fingers trembling as she dialed his number. Hearing her decision, he frowned, his face, vivid in her imagination, turning stern. "Fine, I'll wait," he said, but his voice was cold, like Seattle's autumn rain. Emily felt an invisible wall growing between them, her heart tightening with the anticipation of change. She returned to her table where straw lay scattered and began weaving, seeking calm. Her fingers moved rhythmically, but her thoughts swirled around James, his proposal, and her own fears. She recalled a night after a previous breakup, weaving a straw figure until dawn, finding solace in the act. Straw weaving was her way of communing with herself, finding answers in silence. The next morning, Emily woke with a mix of anxiety and hope, shimmering in her soul like sunlight through clouds. She decided to dedicate the day to straw weaving, which always helped her gather her thoughts. Her fingers deftly wove golden strands, and memories of past heartaches surfaced. Boyfriends who promised eternity but vanished, leaving only pain. She recalled a time when love felt close but dissolved like morning fog over Lake Washington. The straw angel on her table seemed a symbol of hope, but it reminded her that her heart hadn't found peace. She gazed at it, its tiny wings trembling in a slight draft, recalling Madame Clara's words about fate. Emily felt she stood at a crossroads where every step could alter her life. Her thoughts swirled like the leaves falling outside,
when an unexpected knock at the door interrupted her reverie. Her heart beat faster, as if sensing something momentous. She set aside the straw, adjusted her hair, loose strands escaping her bun, and went to answer the door, unaware that this encounter would change everything. Her steps echoed softly on the wooden floor, a feeling rising in her chest that fate was about to turn a new page.
Emily woke the next day with a sense of lightness, as if refusing to hastily move in with James had lifted an invisible weight from her shoulders. The sun flooded her apartment in Seattle's suburbs with soft golden light, reflecting off glass surfaces and creating a cozy atmosphere that calmed her soul. Scattered straw lay on the table, ready to be transformed into a new figure, and the air carried the scent of fresh mint she'd added to her morning coffee. Her long chestnut hair was tied in a loose bun, and her green eyes sparkled with curiosity as she began her work. Straw weaving was Emily's way of expressing herself, finding harmony in the chaos of thoughts buzzing in her mind like the distant sounds of the city. She sat at the table, holding a straw angel, and recalled Madame Clara's words about hasty decisions diverting her from her true path. The thought warmed her, but also reminded her that she hadn't yet found answers to her questions. Emily loved starting her day in silence before the city woke. She poured herself coffee, sat by the window, and watched a light fog settle over Seattle's suburbs. Her apartment was her sanctuary, where every detail, from embroidered pillows to old photos on the walls, told the story of her life. She remembered moving to Seattle after college, filled with dreams of an art career, but reality forced her to work as an administrator in a small gallery. The job brought her joy, but didn't allow her to fully express her creative potential. Straw weaving became her outlet, a way to reconnect with her true self. A sudden knock at the door startled Emily, and she set the straw aside. Opening the door, she saw Ethan, a new neighbor who had moved into the building a few weeks ago. Ethan was tall and lean, with short, slightly curly blonde hair and a sincere smile that felt as warm as a summer day. His blue eyes shone with curiosity as he said, "Hi, I'm Ethan. Can you help with the internet? I'm not sure which provider to choose." His voice was soft, with a hint of shyness that made Emily smile. She replied, "I'm not great with tech, but I've heard mobile routers are good." Her voice was quiet, tinged with uncertainty, as if afraid of saying the wrong thing. Ethan asked to check the signal using her Wi-Fi, and Emily, after a moment's hesitation, let him in, feeling a slight thrill that quickened her pulse. Inside, Ethan immediately noticed the straw figures arranged on shelves along the walls. His eyes lit up as he spotted a small straw angel on the windowsill, bathed in sunlight. "Did you make this? It's incredible," he exclaimed, gently touching the figure, as if afraid to damage it. Emily, feeling a spark of pride, explained, "It's a talisman, protects against misfortune. I weave them to calm down when my thoughts get tangled." Her cheeks flushed slightly as she spoke of her hobby, and she felt the tension in her chest ease. Ethan, an IT specialist, glanced at her old laptop on the table and asked, "Is your computer working okay? It looks like it's glitching." His voice carried genuine concern, and Emily admitted her tech struggles. Ethan offered to come back that evening to check the system, and she agreed eagerly, sensing his presence filled the room with a warmth she'd been missing. Ethan shared that he'd moved to Seattle from Portland, where he worked on a startup, but wanted to change to explore new opportunities. His easy manner and genuine interest in her work made Emily feel at ease. She recalled how rarely people showed interest in her creations without judgment. That evening, Ethan returned with a small flash drive of programs. He ran an antivirus scan, and while it worked, Emily offered tea. They sat in her small kitchen where the scent of mint and brewed tea mingled, and Seattle's lights twinkled outside in the dusk. Ethan spoke enthusiastically about her straw work. "You don't sell these? They're so unique, they'd sell themselves." His words brimmed with excitement, and Emily, embarrassed, admitted she'd never considered selling. "I wouldn't know where to start," she confessed, lowering her eyes to her cup. Smiling, Ethan offered to build her a website to showcase her work to the world. His enthusiasm was contagious, and Emily felt a new spark in her heart. perhaps hope that her creations could matter. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Sophie, Emily's friend with whom she shared all her joys and sorrows. Sophie, an energetic brunette with a short haircut and expressive brown eyes, burst into the apartment in tears. "I broke up with Jack," she cried, tossing her bag onto the couch and wiping tears with her sweater sleeve. Emily felt awkward in front of Ethan, but couldn't leave her friend in distress. Ethan, sensing the situation, politely excused himself, explaining the laptop would finish scanning on its own, and left a brief instruction. "Just click OK when it's done." Emily thanked him, feeling a pang of regret as he left, but her thoughts shifted to Sophie. Sophie had grown up in Seattle, and her vibrant nature contrasted with Emily's quiet demeanor. She worked as a marketer in a large company and loved a lively lifestyle, but her relationships often ended in drama. In the kitchen, Sophie poured out her pain, her voice trembling with hurt. "You can't trust men, Emily," she insisted. "You shouldn't have refused to move in with James. You need to keep them in check or they'll cheat." Her words sowed new doubts in Emily's mind. She recalled how James had been staying late at work, avoiding direct answers about his affairs. Her heart tightened with anxiety, and she questioned whether delaying to move was the right choice. The next day, Emily resolved to talk openly with James. They met in a Seattle park where autumn leaves rustled underfoot and a cool breeze hinted at winter's approach. The park was full of people, but Emily felt alone. Gathering her courage, she asked, "Are you in touch with Laura, your ex?" James, frowning, replied, "It's just legal help. I'm a director. We have a lawyer." His tone was sharp, and Emily felt her heart ache with hurt. The conversation turned into an argument, and James, unwilling to explain, left, citing a meeting with investors. Emily stayed in the park, watching leaves fall, her hopes dimming. Upset, Emily walked home, her steps soft on the sidewalk. She gazed at Seattle's cloudy sky, feeling her heart torn between doubts and a desire for clarity. Suddenly, Ethan caught up with her, his blue eyes filled with concern. "Why so sad?" he asked. Emily shared that she'd fought with James, her voice trembling with emotion. Ethan, smiling, said, "You're a creative soul. Emotions are normal. It'll work out." They went to her apartment, and as she poured tea, she felt his words warm her like a cozy blanket on a cold day. Ethan mentioned finishing a major project and buying a cake to celebrate. He invited her to join him, and she agreed, feeling a new spark in her heart. Perhaps trust. Looking at him, his sincere smile felt like a ray of light in the darkness of her doubts.
Emily sat on a bus heading to the suburbs of Tacoma, where Madame Clara lived. Outside, autumn landscapes drifted by, golden fields and a gray sky hanging over the mountains, creating a melancholy atmosphere. Her heart was heavy with doubts, and she clutched a straw angel, which felt like her only anchor in the storm of her thoughts. She recalled her fight with James, his cold words calling her hobby provincial. Emily felt their relationship cracking like dry straw under her fingers, and her green eyes gazed out the window, seeing only her swirling thoughts like falling leaves. She remembered how James always rushed, his eyes rarely lingering on her longer than needed for conversation. His world was full of contracts and meetings, and Emily felt like an outsider in it. Arriving at Madame Clara's cottage, Emily felt her tension ease. The cottage stood amid a garden where wildflowers swayed in the breeze and the air smelled of herbs and calm. Madame Clara, a slender woman in her middle years with kind brown eyes and gray strands neatly tucked into a bun, greeted her with a warm smile. Her white linen blouse swayed in the breeze, giving her the air of a wise healer. "James is talking to Laura. I'm afraid he's cheating," Emily confessed, her eyes glistening with tears she tried to hold back. Madame Clara, gazing thoughtfully, replied, "He's not cheating, but you're deceiving yourself, seeking comfort instead of love. Find an object that attracts chance and perform a ritual." Her voice was warm but firm, instilling faith in Emily. Emily returned to Seattle, her thoughts filled with the seer's words. She sifted through her belongings, searching for what Madame Clara meant. Her gaze fell on the straw angel hanging above her bed, its tiny wings trembling in a draft. Emily recalled crafting it, pouring her dreams of happiness into it. She performed a ritual with charmed salt and a handkerchief, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Her heart beat faster, as if sensing change. That night, James called, suggesting a romantic getaway to a resort in the mountains near Tacoma. Emily was thrilled, imagining them walking among pines hand in hand. But the next day, he canceled, citing urgent business. "Go with a friend, I'm busy," he said sharply, his words hitting Emily like a cold wind. Hurt, she decided to go alone. At the resort, amid picturesque mountains, she received a bouquet of wildflowers with an unsigned note. Thinking it was from James, her heart warmed with hope for reconciliation. Back in Seattle, Emily decided to give James a straw painting she'd worked on for weeks. She imagined him delighting in her creativity, his eyes lighting up with warmth. But his reaction was cold. "This is provincial. My wife should care about something more prestigious." His words struck Emily like the cold rain drenching Seattle's streets. She felt James didn't see the real her, and her heart broke like a fragile straw figure. That day she met Ethan, who noticed her sadness. "What happened?" he asked, his blue eyes filled with concern that warmed her soul. Emily shared her hurt, and Ethan, smiling, said, "Your painting is incredible. I want to buy it." He also helped her design a website for her work, patiently explaining how to present her creations. Emily felt his support restoring her confidence, like a sunbeam on a cloudy day. Later, Emily learned the flowers at the resort were from Ethan, not James. The revelation made her heart race, and she felt a warmth she hadn't known before. James, meanwhile, proposed marriage and selling her apartment to buy a house outside the city. "It's for our future," he said, but his words sounded like a business deal, not love. Emily realized she didn't want that life, practical but soulless. She returned to Madame Clara, holding a small stone Sophie had given her as a talisman. "This is a gaming die," the seer said, her kind eyes warm. "It confuses your fate, blocking true love. Ethan is your destiny, but this object stands between you." Emily recalled carrying the stone in her pocket, thinking it lucky. She performed the ritual as Madame Clara instructed, saying, "May fate not tangle my paths, may love return to me." Afterward, she felt clarity, as if Seattle's clouds parted to reveal a blue sky. Emily called Ethan and invited him over. "Were those flowers from you?" she asked, looking into his eyes. Ethan, smiling shyly, admitted, "Yes, I've liked you since we met, but I didn't want to interfere with your relationship." Emily, feeling warmth in her chest, replied, "It's over with, James. You helped me see what I want." Ethan took her hand, and in his gaze she saw what she'd long sought, sincerity and closeness. They began dating, and Emily felt her heart had finally found a home. James returned to his ex-wife Laura for business reasons, and Emily realized he was never her destiny. Madame Clara, smiling, said, "The gaming die tangles life, but you've found your path." Holding her straw angel, Emily felt her dreams coming alive like flowers after rain.